Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webcast on workforce development. I am Roxana Ayala, a research assistant with the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, also known as ACEEE, and I'll be the moderator for this session. We'll start this webcast with a few housekeeping announcements and then quickly move on to our presenters, followed by Q&A if time permits. First and foremost, thank you to all of our sponsors and ally members for their support of the Energy Efficiency as a Resource Conference and ACEEE. Attendees are in listen-only mode. Please use the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions of the presenters. As a moderator, I will be sharing your questions with the presenters following the presentations if time permits. Otherwise, we will continue the Q&A in the Zoom chat/discussion after the session. Watch out for the Zoom link to be posted in the chat during the session or downloaded in the resource section. We ask that you please refrain from using the chat for any dialogue other than asking questions. If there's an attendee you would like to connect with, please use the attendees link on the left-hand side column of the platform. All registrants are listed alphabetically. Also, on the left-hand side, you can find a resource section. Resources contain a copy of the program in a PDF format, an attendee list for downloading Zoom links for all the chats and discussions, and an evaluation form that we ask everyone to complete after they view their last session. Anyone who completes the evaluation and includes their name and a testimonial will receive a $25 discount to attend the 2023 National Conference on Energy Efficiency as a Resource in Philadelphia. All presentations will be available for on-demand viewing within a few days on this engagement hub. Presenters' PowerPoints can be found on their page in the program participants section. And now I would like to introduce our distinguished panel of speakers. They are Joe Sarubi, Matt Evans, and Jen Loomis. We'll start with our first speaker, who is Joe, a nationally recognized thought leader and consultant with 45 years of experience specializing in technical education, training, and workforce development. Recently, Joe has consulted for the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, serving as project manager for 3 National Department of Energy initiatives: the Green Buildings Career Map, Solar Instructor Training Network, and Grid Energy for Accelerated Renewable Energy Deployment. Joe was a college professor and department chair for building systems technologies at Hudson Valley Community College. And as executive director, Joe was the main architect of TechSmart, the country's first integrated training and education center for semiconductor manufacturing and alternative and renewable technologies. In 2009, Joe was honored by the visit of President Obama, in which the president recognized his work in developing programs for other institutions to emulate. For this discussion, Joe will discuss how career mapping is helping to increase the talent pipeline for the built environment. And with that, I'll pass it over to Joe.
Great, Rox, thank you very much. So folks...
And your slides are looking great.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Excellent. So great with when technology works, right? So thank you. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. I really appreciate it. Yeah, building the talent pipeline, which is critical for energy efficiency to grow in the nation as we anticipate. And I'm going to use the Green Buildings Career Map as the basis for some of my conversation. It was the latest career map developed by the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. I was a project manager for that. That was with Department of Energy funding on again, this being the third one that the Interstate Renewable Energy Council has done. The other ones being the Solar Career Map and the HVAC, our career map, also known as Careers in Climate Control. What was the impetus for creating the Green Buildings Career Map? Being in the technologies environment as long as I was, coming up in the construction trades, I saw certainly the, I hate to use the word sad, but the denigration of the trades in general. And when I look at the millennials and their desire to get it potentially working in this particular environment, especially within the construction trades, there seems to be a a diversion or aversion to doing that. And actually, EGIA Foundation did a recent study that over 70% of the students or millennials did not see an opportunity to work in the HVAC industry, which we know is a big part of the energy efficiency industry as well. Additionally, the impetus for this was the NREL study that basically talked about all the different credentials out there and how they're fragmented and not necessarily as transparent. To help people understand how they get the right skill sets for this particular environment. And as with many of the trades and industries around energy efficiency and renewable energy as a whole, there certainly is a dearth or lack of diversity for African Americans, minorities, women as a whole. And we've been hearing over and over again the number of contractors that are struggling to find a talent pipeline, workers, to grow their business, which we know has tremendous opportunity at this particular point. So that was the impetus for building a Green Buildings career map. And I want to start getting into the why on all that. So why career maps? I will say way back when I started teaching at the college and trying to get people interested in working in the technical industries, more specifically around technical trades, there didn't seem to be a strong interest. I realized myself that I needed to show a future, a vision, and where these students could get work. And not only that, what type of career progression they might have within that particular industry, and how their skills can easily be transferable from one location to another. And it started to dawn on me that if I could help them have a vision, all right, what I call career GPS, that there was a better chance that they would actually take my program. So it ended up being a great recruitment tool and has really been the impetus of a lot of the work I've been doing with the Interstate Renewable Energy Council and other companies across, I would say, the last 10, 12 years of my work out there as a consultant. I truly firmly believe you can't be what you can't see. And there's a number of studies out there, you might hear a little more about it later, that millennials really want to know where they're going. And when you think about generation, I'm starting to date myself, but and my parents' generation, I would say, in many cases, people would end up getting a job for one company, working there for 30 years. And when they started, if it was an entry-level position, they kind of haphazardly moved up the chain of command, not necessarily knowing when they started what opportunities existed for them. We don't see that today. We hear over and over about millennials and Gen Zs who will potentially be moving from career to career, or at least navigating through multiple jobs within their time of working, upwards of several different jobs. And they also know that. And so for them to be able to decide they want to get into a particular industry, it's important for them to have that vision of what that industry can do for them. And it ends up being a great retention tool for employers as well, besides a recruitment tool, that being career maps. So the other thing for the energy efficiency that I think is positive is the fact that millennials want to see the value and ethics for employers, that sustainability matters. So in that sense, that's a good thing to kind of help attract. It's that extra value add, I guess I would say. At the end of the day, career maps also are extremely interactive, engaging, and intuitive. And that's important because you want to make sure people are actually using it. When we talk about who's it for, well, certainly for a particular student who might be looking at a career through exploration. It also could be for an employer who's looking to recruit, and they can use that by showing stories of students who've come through their particular company in the past and act as a good retention tool. So I'm talking about kind of a broad perspective here, but also for guidance counselors and educators and even policymakers could take advantage of this, knowing the different jobs out there that seem to be the most in demand. Another thing I want to mention is in today's world, we've learned back since 2008 that a lot of students who went on to college, four-year degree, that when they graduated from that particular degree program, that there wasn't necessarily a job out there for them. And so I think it's really important that us within the industry really help promote the idea that when people are coming out of high school, if they want to work in the built environment, that they actually do have a choice. They could actually go to work right away, or maybe go in some non-traditional role of just immediately going to a four-year university. Maybe it's an apprenticeship program, maybe taking a job right away and doing on-the-job training. Maybe it's getting a couple of certifications where they can start to work right away and then figure out where they want to go from there. But I think we really need to kind of be promoting it as a value choice, and that going away to a four-year university isn't the only choice. There are a number of opportunities for students when they leave high school, and something we should be paying attention to. With that, I'm giving you a screenshot right here of the building's career map as a whole. You'll see all the different bubbles on there. There ends up actually 55 particular on this particular career map. We usually try to keep within 40, 45, but the subject matter experts that helped us develop this were really adamant about certain job titles that they felt needed to be on there. So we pushed the envelope. You want to be careful, just isn't a whole kaleidoscope of bubbles. But in this case, we still think it works. So with that, I'm going to actually go live right now to show you how this thing actually works. So for a moment, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to reshare my screen. And if Roxanne, if you could tell me, or Kim, if we can see this.
We can see it, Joe.
Wonderful. So folks, this is a live version of the Green Buildings career map, and you can see the 4 different colored sectors. At the bottom are the identifiers for those sectors. And when this was being developed, there was a lot of very spirited conversation around how we should identify those sectors within the industry. As if I was to hover over any one of those bubbles, you can see it expand, and it will actually give a job title. Additionally, on the left-hand side, if I was to click one of those particular sectors that we see there, I can actually identify all the different job titles as well, just moving through a particular sector. And you can see that's all the way down the right-hand side. So that would work with any one of these sectors if I wanted to use that as a means for navigating. But if I wanted to get into a particular job, I could see in this particular case, I can click that job, and I'm going to close out of this one on the side here for a second. Let me close out of this one as well. I'll pick energy efficient technician as an example. What's neat about it is that as somebody is looking at this particular career map, they'll see all the different possibilities from that location. If a particular student or person wanted to get into that job, where they could eventually navigate to from that location. There's also just a brief descriptor, and then I can actually go into the job detail, which would give me salary range, required education and training, a more detailed description of the actual job within that particular sector. It also gives whether I need a specific work experience or not, and the skills and requirements. What I'd also like to show is kind of sample multi-sector routes. These are particular routes that, as subject matter experts said, if somebody did start as a building performance installer, this would be a fairly reasonable career progression that somebody could take within the sector, but then across different sectors. And that could happen from any one of these particular areas, as you can see. So that gives somebody a chance to explore this as well. What I'd like to pay a little attention to are new collar jobs. And again, this goes back to that choice I was talking about earlier. If you look at this particular career map, of the 55 bubbles, over 30 of them happen to be a new collar job. New collar job, in my definition, is, and I kind of coined this from a former CEO of IBM, who was looking to attract people in the IT area of IBM and said, we don't necessarily need people with four-year degrees. We need people with the right credentials, all right, the right skill sets. And if they've got some of that under their belt, we would hire them in a heartbeat. And so I said, that's something that would work well within the energy efficiency industry. So each one of these jobs are jobs that do not require a four-year degree. And so again, as far as being attractive, somebody is the highest level up on the top here could be a contractor or could be a chief engineer in that regard. These are jobs that you can migrate through with starting out, and in many cases, even without a degree, getting a lot of experience. So wanted you to see that. And then lastly, at the top of this, about this map, there's a whole section in here that kind of gives a sense of how this map was developed and why. The other area that's important is about this industry, and it gives people a chance to see the details here as well. And each one of those individual sectors, again, also has an area that gives a greater descriptor. And then resources. This was another area that we wanted to make sure people had access to. And again, I'm talking from a national perspective on this particular map. We broke it down to several different sectors, but we also wanted to make sure that we were looking at the minority areas or the underserved population. So we create a section on organizations that are focused on underrepresented populations, so that people can see where they could get some additional help if they wanted to move into this particular industry. And then lastly, going back up, making sure that we had frequently asked questions like, what is a green building, or why only 55 jobs? Where's my job? What about education and training? These are kind of typical questions we normally get. And we tried to answer them the best we could to make it as intuitive and an opportunity for people to do their own exploration without any effort. With that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to turn it back over. Or actually, I'm going to reshare my screen. Sorry about that. One more time. Go back to my PowerPoint and go to, one too far. Sorry. It's the end of my presentation. I wanted you to be able to see the actual URL for Green Buildings Career Map, and I will look forward to answering any questions you might have afterwards. And I'll pass it back to Roxana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe, for sharing about the Green Careers Map. As a reminder to folks, please use the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen to ask any questions for any of the presenters, and we will relay these questions during Q&A. So our next speaker is Matt Evans, who is a managing principal at Julius Education. Julius provides innovative engagement solutions for clean energy organizations to attract and retain employees while building internal talent. Leading associations, utilities, and corporations rely on Julius' online career path platform and skills courses. Prior to Julius, Matt was Senior Vice President of Pearson, a global education company where he was responsible for delivering on the strategic goals of 40 university partners across 300 online degree programs, serving 80,000 adult learners annually. Matt is also the co-founder and board member of Imagine H2O, the leading water tech accelerator. For this presentation, Matt will look at how workforce development can work to advance the energy efficiency market. I'll pass it over to Matt.
Thank you, Roxana. I just want to confirm, can you see my slides?
Yeah, I can see your slides.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction, Joe. Thank you for your presentation. Certainly, we're big believers in career mapping, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. As Roxana mentioned, I'm Matt Evans. I'm one of the co-founders of Julius, and we work today with utilities, corporations, major industry associations who are dealing with this changing world of work and are focused on building the workforce that they need for clean energy. I'm going to spend a little time today talking about the kind of the larger picture, and then second, talk about perhaps some strategies that you might consider for your organization if any of these themes ring true for you as well. So to get started, these are, I think, some really interesting headlines which capture the big point that the world of work is changing across industries, energy certainly, but also others. And the pace of that change is accelerating. As we look at other industries from biotech to retail food service to construction manufacturing, there are a similar set of talent pressures. And I think the headline here is that every industry is thinking, how do I up my game? How am I going to differentiate to make myself the employer of choice to attract and retain the talent that I need to achieve my goals? So we're seeing that across industry. We also included a couple of quotes here from actually two Julius partners, NREL and CWD, and certainly some observations that we're seeing across the energy efficiency landscape. So within energy, as we look more broadly, there are, I think, a series of massive challenges, but also opportunities. And there are three figures that we want to spend a second on because I think they help to paint both sides of the equation. Starting from left to right, on the left side, obviously there's a massive energy transition, millions of clean tech jobs in the pipeline. Even if these numbers are half of what we expect from what we hear out of Washington, the amount of a skilled workforce that's needed is in the millions and is significant. Second, this is happening in a context where already the vast majority of energy employers are facing challenges with difficulty hiring. And in addition, there are real DE&I challenges with women and minorities severely underrepresented in the industry. So that's already happening even without the add-on of all the new jobs that we expected. So those are maybe some of the challenges. On the positive side and on the far right side, what we see is that in the energy space, there are a number of these jobs and career pathways, more importantly, which don't require a 4-year degree. And Joe was actually alluding to a lot of this when he was speaking earlier. So the opportunity for the sector is, say, there are 65 million Americans with a high school but no college degree. What can we do about that? And how can the energy sector catch up to other industries who are perhaps farther ahead in making transparent what those career opportunities are to pull more talent into the sector? Joe actually was touching on this idea of new collar job, which is borrowed from the technology space, but really to kind of bring that to life from our perspective, it's showing that there are progression opportunities for folks. But how do we tell that story better? How do we tell the story that someone can start with entry-level roles and work their way up with just a high school degree to be making six figures easily in senior level roles? This is a great opportunity for the sector, and this is a great opportunity to tell that story better on behalf of perhaps your organization or others in the industry to ensure that we have the skilled talent that we need, because it's certainly a very attractive career progression pathways. I think it's also helpful to maybe kind of double click a little bit on what is on the mind of today's workforce. What are the issues that they're thinking about? What do they prioritize when they're thinking about a job, when they're thinking about a career path? And then by extension, how can your organization, how can companies respond to what we know folks are looking for? To call out maybe a few items here from the research, at the top, these top two really speak to this idea that particularly younger generations are put a big premium on understanding what's possible for me in my future at this organization. Where can I go from here? That's a very important criteria for selecting a company to go work at. It's also an important criteria for staying at a company, retaining talent. So even just besides compensation, it's this understanding about what's possible in career development as the top priority. This is actually true across industries from all the research, but it's certainly true in energy as well. So thinking about that as part of your response plan or strategies was an important component. Down below, there's two elements here which speak to more on the training side of things, and also might be considerations for any company's broader workforce strategy. On the bottom left, we see that increasingly, again, younger generations have high expectations for the types of training that their company is providing to them, and the expectation that their employer will fill that for them. And then on the right, this is a very interesting kind of larger phenomenon that we've seen across higher ed, is the move to increasing short form educational offerings. And those have really exploded, certainly over the last several years, where individuals are looking for alternatives to long form educational offerings, even from traditional universities. And we're seeing universities of all shape and size respond with offerings, even from the most prestigious names in the country to providing shorter than degree offerings to meet that demand. So this is, I think, a broader sense of what's on folks' mind. I lay that out just to set the context for a framework that may be helpful to you, or that we would suggest as a way to think about talent solutions as it relates to your organization. There's a lot on here, but I would call out maybe a couple things in particular. First, from our perspective at Julius, we think it's very important to think about an end-to-end solution to have the workforce that you need. So as we can see from left to right, there's a full continuum here. For many organizations, they may get any one of these ribboned areas right. Perhaps for an organization, they may get the training element, just the yellow piece, but very few organizations have the kind of the end-to-end solution design that we think is critical to compete effectively in today's world of work. So that's, I think, one key element. The second key element of this framework that we would call out would be on the left side. The starting point is really thinking about what's in it for me as the employee, and that's starting with their career awareness and career exploration. So as we talked about earlier, knowing how important that is for today's workforce, how do we bring that to life for individuals? How do we understand when they're at a job fair and trying to understand your organization, that they understand not only tomorrow's opportunity, but how that's opening up other opportunities at your organization? How do we bring that to life for existing employees so they don't leave feeling like they've hit some kind of ceiling, but actually they're understanding the full range of career opportunities for them? So the end-to-end solution design from our perspective is one of our kind of big suggestions for you all to consider. And the second would be the career exploration as key elements. I say that to tee up kind of one case study to share with you all. We work with a number of utilities. One is an organization here. This happens to be a water utility, and what you're seeing here is a career map through the Julius Career Path platform, which we built with the utility, tailored for what that organization needed as they were wrestling with, how do I build a bench for my organization? How am I going to do succession planning here? And they needed new tools to bring career navigation to life for their employee base. So the Career Path platform, from our perspective, is a very important part of this, and starts organizations on that left side of that framework that we looked at a second ago on behalf of their employees and, frankly, their managers, who are the ones who are oftentimes having these conversations with employees about what's possible for them. The Path platforms, I think it's also important too that they bring the job and career opportunities to life in more specificity to say, in this instance, what is a cross-connection specialist? What are the skills that I'm expected to have in this role? What are the skills that I'm developing which are transferable to other opportunities inside the organization? And that's really the key element for folks to understand better. That's really, as they think about what's my future here, am I developing the skills for the future? Bringing that to life is, we would suggest, is foundational. And then lastly, I think it's fundamentally critical to have not just a career map, but also how it integrates with action, how it integrates with training, so that folks clearly understand when they're doing training, what's in it for them and how it's benefiting their career prospects and what's possible for them in the future. So it's, you think back to that framework that we looked at a second ago. It's not starting with the training. It's not starting with, say, hey, here's a login for my employee to go bang around on some courses, because we know from all the data, adults don't work that way. They don't just proactively kind of go into that training. It's really starting from a foundational port about what's possible for their future, and then linking the learning directly tied to what's in it for them in terms of their own career progression. So that's, I think, from our perspective, some of the broader themes that we see in the changing world of work, a broader framework that may be helpful to you as you think about for your own organization going forward. And certainly, if you'd like to continue the conversation, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is on the screen. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Matt. And just as another reminder to our participants, please feel free to use the chat box to post any questions you have for either Joe or Matt. And now we will hear from Jen Loomis, who is a social scientist with a background in environmental sociology, social inequality, and qualitative methodology. She is a principal consultant at Opinion Dynamics, where she provides insights into the role of human behavior. Her qualitative interviewing skills uncover the why behind the what and reveal the experiences of individuals as they balance various considerations in decision making. She has applied these skills to understand how market sectors confront increasingly stringent energy codes and calls for decarbonization. Her work spans building types and uncovers the variant dynamics in the residential sector between single-family homes, affordable housing, and multifamily housing. For her discussion, Jen will explore how heat pump workforce development and training can drive energy and carbon reductions while spurring economic recovery. And now I'll pass it to Jen.
Okay, thank you, Roxana. I'm sorry, let me pull my notes up here. All right, and I'd also like to just acknowledge my colleague, Ellen Steiner, who helped me with this research. So this first slide is just to explain where we're at right now. So climate change is real, and we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We need to move from dirty fuel sources to clean ones. And growing numbers of states and local governments are implementing goals towards this end. But at the same time, there's a need for economic development. We're still feeling the effects of the pandemic, and lots of people have lost their jobs. And in fact, in 2020 alone, according to the DOE, the energy efficiency sector lost about 272,000 jobs. So when these people come back to the workforce or enter the workforce, we don't want them in a low wage job. We want them on a career path like our other two presenters talked about. We want them to have a living wage or a family sustaining wage. Well, I'm here to tell you that heat pumps can help us with both of those things. So let's briefly talk about heat pumps. There's two main types. There's those that do water heating, and then there's the HVAC type that do space heating and cooling. And the thing about heat pumps is that it doesn't generate heat. It moves heat from one place to another. And that's why they're so energy efficient. And that's why states are really pushing for more heat pump installations. When they replace natural gas systems, when they use renewable energy on the grid, they're really avoiding a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. The other reason why heat pumps can help us right now in relation to COVID is because so many people are at home and they need to reconfigure their spaces to work or do school from home. And so there's been a big uptick in remodeling and additions. And at this time when they're remodeling is the perfect time to upgrade their heating or water heating equipment. And in particular, ductless heat pumps, which are a type of HVAC heat pumps that don't need ductwork, they're perfect for these additions. So I want to make clear that with heat pumps, the technology is here. They've improved a lot over the decades. Decades ago, they were not quite as great as they are now, but now they're very efficient and very reliable. And the bottleneck that's holding back more heat pumps is a lack of a skilled workforce to train or to install them. So without the skilled workforce, we need to train them in order to develop them. And existing contractors have a lot of concerns, so training targeted at them will need to target their misperceptions and their concerns to overcome those. However, there's also the emerging workforce that are just coming in, and they present a great opportunity to get them convinced on the value proposition of heat pumps and understand how great heat pumps are from the very beginning. And then they can also train some of their colleagues once they're out on the job. And everything else I'll be talking with you about today comes from research that me or my colleagues at Opinion Dynamics have done. We've done in depth interviews with contractors and plumbers from coast to coast, from California to New York and the Midwest. We've even done something called a DACOM data gathering exercise, where we were in a room with a group of contractors for 2 full days, and we went through all of the steps required to replace something with a heat pump. And it's a data gathering technique where you identify all of the knowledge, skills, and abilities required to perform the duties of a job. So let me get into the training topics. So first of all, explaining how a heat pump works is really important. As I mentioned, they move heat, and so they need to be in a place where they can access that heat. And also explaining like the coefficient of performance is really important because that translates into the energy efficiency. Um, Also, what is really, really critical is explaining how heat pumps work in cold weather. This was something we found it was like a deeply entrenched belief among contractors. They would not install a heat pump to be the home's sole heating system because they were convinced heat pumps do not work in cold temperatures. And they even described it in terms of this is a matter of life or death, and I won't be responsible. So as I mentioned, heat pumps have gotten a lot better over the years. There's some out there now that are rated to perform at minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit. And also explaining to contractors too that when it gets cold, they keep working. They're just not as efficient. So another key thing is the sales training, because they are a little more expensive, and so the sales training should focus on why the higher upfront cost is justified and help the customer understand what it is and make them feel confident with their choice of heat pump equipment. Marketing support is also really helpful here. Providing cut sheets that explain the efficiency and the ratings and incentives that are available to help make the sale. And you can see in that quote in the big bubble, it says, the training really gives you a better idea of the system capabilities and bells and whistles. And when you understand the bells and whistles, then you can explain that accurately to the homeowner and translate that into why this system is better than the previous model or the lower model. And they mean less efficient model. Okay, also installation is really important because they're sucking heat from one place and moving it to another. It needs to be in a place where the temperature and airspace requirements are correct. Heat pump water heaters can be a little bulky and top heavy too, and that's a concern contractors have. And also, if you're replacing a natural gas water heater with an electric one, there may not be an outlet there. So, figuring out how to get the correct electrical service to the installation site. And then finally, troubleshooting and maintenance also. So the contractor, feels comfortable that in case anything goes wrong, it's not going to be a big, costly, time-consuming endeavor to fix it. And making sure they explain to the homeowner how to maintain it so that we do get the performance and energy saving goals that are promised. Okay, well, if they're, complicated and have all these requirements and they're top heavy, why would a contractor want to participate in a training? Well, it can benefit them in a variety of ways, actually. So, first of all, it can help them stay competitive in the marketplace with contractors who are already offering them. It can attract customers, including those who are green minded, those who already know about heat pumps, or those who want to go all electric. It can help them grow their business too, because they are slightly more expensive. If the markup on their products is the same, if it's more expensive, they'll make a little more money. And then it also allows them to differentiate themselves in the marketplace and show they're a progressive, energy conscious contractor. And energy bill savings are a feature that is important to customers. And let me just give you a specific example too. So we heard in Illinois that they have hard water and this degrades the water tanks faster. And so the thing is the heat pump water heaters came with a 10-year warranty, whereas the other water heating equipment had a 7-year warranty. So when the contractor was able to offer this 10-year warranty with the equipment, it was a really good selling point. It really put the customer, it gave them peace of mind, and it gave the contractor an advantage in the marketplace. Okay, now I'll move on to talk about who offers training and the formats of that training. And there actually are a lot of entities out there who are already offering training. Vocational schools and community colleges are one, and these are great for the entering workforce, and they can train these students on the latest science and the latest technological specifications so that they're ready to go when they get on the job. And we also have an opportunity to target schools and colleges in communities that have been disproportionately impacted by pollution and climate change. And we can bring residents from those communities and train them and get them in the workforce and bring them along in the clean energy transition. We also found that local governments with either natural gas bans or REACH codes were offering training. And these were effective because they really trained contractors on the local law and the local codes and policies and permitting processes so that they could get it right the first time. Manufacturers offer training, and these are great for the technical specifications of the equipment. We found distributors actually play a really key role in the supply chain in connecting manufacturers with the installers. And distributors offer a lot of training. Sometimes they'll bring a variety of manufacturers in and have a counter day where installers could come in and see the different manufacturers' equipment and see the differences between them. Manufacturers can also offer that marketing support I was talking about, do co-branded marketing, or provide these sheets that they can show the homeowner and show them the incentives and the efficiency and SEER ratings, and show them how it'll save them money in the long term, and it's a good investment. Distributors can also have models in stock, like that heat pump water heater I said is kind of bulky, and that way installers can pick it up and play around with it. Utilities offer training. For instance, the investor-owned utilities in California have energy centers that offer heat pump trainings. There's trade associations like ASHRAE. And then building science experts or consultants who've been working with heat pumps for the last 10, 20 years and who may have learned some tips or tricks, they could train contractors too and help them out. And some of the formats here, in person is an option, like in workshops or on the job. Virtual may make a little more sense right now during COVID, but it would be good if those virtual trainings came with a certification test at the end to demonstrate competence. At the distributor, like I was just mentioning. And then also firsthand experience. We've come across a couple programs in the US that are pretty innovative, and they're actually giving a free heat pump to contractors to install in their homes. And this allows the contractor to, install it, understand that, and experience living with it. And so they get that firsthand experience and reduce their concerns. Now, if you're if you're a plumber or a contractor and you want to get started in heat pumps, this might feel a little overwhelming or daunting. Like, wow, there's so many places to go. Like, where should I start? And I would recommend they start with the distributor because they probably already have a relationship with the distributor. Contractors and plumbers they buy their equipment almost exclusively from them. And the distributor does have that connection with the manufacturer to get information, get units, and maybe able to pass along a midstream incentive. And so I suggest that would be a great place to start. Okay, now I'm just going to wrap up with a summary slide. So if we can do training on heat pumps, we can drive workforce development and economic development, and we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions at the same time. So training will reduce contractors' heat pump concerns and grow the number of qualified installers. When they're installed correctly, it leads to satisfied customers who will share that and spread via word of mouth with others and grow demand. This will help jurisdictions and utilities meet climate goals because heat pumps will take advantage of renewable energy on the electric grid. And then offering heat pumps can help benefit contractors' business models and give them an advantage in the marketplace. And with that, here is my contact information. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jen. And now we will pivot to our last section for this panel, where we will open up Q&A. Again, if you have any questions, I encourage people to please submit it using the chat on the right-hand side of the screen. I can get us started with a couple questions I have for presenters. So for Joe, when you were presenting the Green Careers Map, you showed that there was a series of, different jobs. And I was wondering, one, how did you all decide which job titles to include in the national map? And then also, when you go into the descriptions, how were salaries determined?
Good question, Roxanne. I'll answer the second question first. This being more of a national map, it was challenging to be able to get, as close as possible the type of salaries that somebody would command with different parts of the country. And so there's the BLS, right, Bureau of Labor Statistics out there that does a comprehensive, job and identifying specific salaries right down to a particular county, but it's only based on a particular job title. So if we didn't have a job title that aligned with the BLS, then we had to go out and do our own kind of collection of information, and we ended up identifying it across multiple cities throughout the country in multiple regions. Then we averaged them out, which is why if somebody goes into that, they see a salary range, usually the low 10% salary up to the top 90% salary. So somebody in a particular area could say, well, all right, well, what is it in my area? Well, that's when they would go out onto a job board and identify that particular job in their area, and it'll actually give the salaries for them at that particular point. So that's how the salaries were identified, with a range. I will tell you, it was also, again, those spirited conversations with the subject matter experts who wanted a lot more job titles on there than we actually could employ on the career map. I mean, let's face it, there's hundreds of job titles out there. Some of the challenges are even around the job titles that we did identify, because somebody, some company, some organization, employer might call it something different. So what we did inside is we said alternative job titles, and even on the BLS has alternative job titles as well for a specific job to identify. But lastly, it was also important for us to try to identify the jobs that were most in demand as much as possible. So in today's market, what people are looking for is like, okay, if I'm starting here now, where can I progress per se in the industry as a whole? And so we tried to pick the ones that seemed to be most in demand based on the subject matter experts, which were from all around the country with very diverse backgrounds to help identify that. Hope that helps.
Great. Thank you, Joe, for answering. So my next question is to Matt. So in your presentation, you emphasize this importance of laying the foundation and really discerning the opportunities and possibilities for individuals who are interested in this energy efficiency workforce. So my question is, based on your work and experience, what partners or resources have you seen that are most important for the companies and organizations that you work with to really accomplish this?
Yeah, so part of what we really want to do is bring the particular story of the organization to life. So it's not generic, but it's really tailored for what that organization needs. So if we think back to that framework that I showed, which is starting with kind of career understanding all the way through training and retention, that's a common framework, but the specifics in there may look a little bit different depending on what kind of organization you have. The jobs which are strategically most important for you to attract talent to today may look a little different from a different organization. The types of skills training that's really top of mind for you today, like we saw with kind of Jen's presentation, that may be different than what it was 2 years ago for you or for a different organization. So a key part of that, of the way we think about things and the way we work with utilities or corporations or associations, is really tailoring it for the strategic priorities that really are top of mind for them, and then using often their own content to bring that to life. So if an organization already has job descriptions that they want all these key roles, this provides a way to bring that to life versus static job boards, which are not nearly as engaging for folks. So it's that kind of customization of that common framework that we'd like to bring to our partners.
Great. Jen, I have a question for you. So in one of your slides, you mentioned that, through these trainings that individuals or these trainings can help reduce contractors' concerns around heat pumps. And I'm curious, can you talk a little bit more about that and how the trainees or maybe the key actors that you mentioned earlier can have or play a role in terms of addressing this issue?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, I mean, so another thing you have to consider is like the trusted messenger. Like, who are they hearing this from? So it would be important that they get linked up with somebody they trust, because that'll be a huge factor in helping that like internalize the information and believe the information. And so, I really like those programs that let contractors have a heat pump in their house and work with it and live with it, because then they're going to understand, like, okay, it does cool my house down maybe a little bit, but it's only a couple degrees and I don't really notice it and it's fine. I think also that the installation training, contractors are pretty nervous about that. They're wondering, there's a control panel, there's modes. How about this condensate drain line? What do I need to do with that? So it's a little bit of a different beast than just a furnace or a tankless water heater. So since it is a little different, they really do need to like learn those specifications and learn the technical details. And then once they get that down and do it over and over, they're going to be convinced.
Great to hear. So as a reminder, folks, we still have 5 minutes in our Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. So I just have one more question for our groups, and kind of segueing into Jen's response is, I'm curious to know, what would you guys say is needed over the long-term horizon to really prepare, whether it be building designers, contractors, operators, or program providers with really the new skills and expertise for really applying these new and emerging energy technologies? And anyone can start.
Well, I mean, I think for me, the headline is that the size of the need is so big that the most important thing is to start to take action, right? That's the specifics of what each organization decides to do may look a little bit different depending on their strategy. But what I would encourage everybody to be doing is what Joe's laid out, what Jen's laid out, whatever folks are thinking about is to get off the sidelines and really be thinking about looking around a corner, because these things take time, and building a talent pipeline for workforce, there's a latency to it. And given the size of what we're looking at, that's an added complication. So that would be the kind of one, I think, closing thought that I'd leave with the panel.
Yeah, I could add to that real quick, Matt. A great setting the table. I think back when I was at the college and some of my students went to work for a contractor who back then was very focused on wanting to learn geothermal heat pumps instead of before air source heat pumps became more popular. And he dove in deep, and next thing you know, he was the go-to contractor in that area. I had a lot of employees, nonstop work. When people started hearing about it, they were like, where do I get this equipment? Even though they knew it was more expensive. But he did that first step that Jen was talking about, and Matt as well, becoming actionable. And when he did, his company just grew leaps and bounds. And then what was really nice, he got a chance to present at conferences and all, like how he did that. It got his company name out there even more and more. So it really steamrolled into a great opportunity because he took that first step Matt was talking about.
And yeah, what I'd add in terms of a long-term horizon is an emphasis on like whole building performance. Because if you put a heat pump into a house that's very leaky and has poor insulation, it's not going to deliver the savings we're hoping for. So making sure contractors know to pay attention to other things in the home, maybe besides just the one unit they're working on, would really help advance the industry.
Great. Well, thank you all for sharing. I hope our participants walk away with any of the 3 suggestions. But I want to thank you all, to our speakers for their presentations, and also to our attendees for participating in today's webcast. And again, if you would like to continue exploring the topics presented today, or talking with any of the presenters, please follow us to the Zoom chat room. The link should have been posted in the chat. So once again, thank you all, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. We'll be in the Zoom.